Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to call to order and welcome you to our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, March the 7th. We do have one addition that we to the agenda, and it's at the end in the bylaw section. And there was just a bylaw that had was not included in the agenda. So that's been there. We'll deal with it then. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. So tomorrow is International Women's Day, and the theme for 2023 is Embrace Equity. To achieve equity means to create an inclusive world, a world where it's recognized that each person has different circumstances and is given the exact resources and opportunities to reach an equal outcome. Tomorrow, I'm looking forward to hosting a group of young women from Lucan Biddulph right here in our offices. And we will talk about their aspirations, their goals, and the challenges that they might be facing as young women in 2023. I'm pleased to say that some of our staff are joining me and will be sharing their employment journeys and what it's like to work in the municipal world. I want to acknowledge all women in leadership positions in our community. Whether you are leading your business, your profession, your family, or all that comes in between, you are trailblazers in your own right. Your contributions and accomplishments will empower future generations and inspire others to become leaders. Your hard work and dedication is an inspiration to all. Lucan Biddulph is committed to supporting women with a vision to innovate and move our community, our businesses, and our families forward. Together, we can strive to keep building a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive future for all. All right, we do not need to go into closed session, and we do not have a public meeting tonight, but we do have a delegation. And this is, of course, our annual presentation from Jacobs, who will be presenting the annual report for the Lucan Biddulph water distribution system. And at this point, as he makes his way to the presenter's desk, because he's here in person, which is great, I'll turn it over to you, Lucas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nice to see everybody again in person. So I've got the 2022 summary report and the annual report. So on page 2 of my report, or page 6 of the agenda, it just kind of goes through a preamble and a system description. I won't have to read that word for word, but on the bottom of the page, modification or maintenance to the drinking water system. There were no major modifications to the Granton or Lucan booster stations. In 2022, there were no water main breaks. There was one service leak on William Street. It was a small hole in a copper service going from our main to a house. There were, on the next page, there were 5 additions of new water main in 2022. Old Clover, Asable Fields, the Lucan Soccer Fields, Fallon Drive reconstruction, and Alice Street reconstruction. All of those projects were done last fall. We'll make our way down. Results of mandatory testing. This is a little different than previous reports. In 2021, we received a new drinking water license, and in that license, they updated our sampling requirements for lead. So if you remember, we used to go into all these homes and used to take samples from private homes. So eventually, the ministry kind of finally realized that all of the municipal lead piping and services were removed. Why are we still going into these private homes and doing these samples? So that changed. So in 2022, we only had 2 lead samples taken in the distribution system on municipal pipe. They were well below the regulatory limit. And we'll keep doing that. So that was a nice change. Compliance, we had our annual inspection, I remember October or November. There were 0 non-compliances that came out of that inspection. We received 100%. The next page are the flows. This flow number gets recorded at the booster station on William Street. So this is everything that goes, this number or this chart includes Granton and Lucan, because everything has to go through the Lucan station. So in 2022, we averaged 855 cubic meters per day. And that is a normal range. You see 2021, they were almost identical. So that was kind of nice to see. We know there's no significant leaks or anything, even with all the addition of all the development, we still managed to keep the flows down. Then that was kind of the summary report. The next is the annual report. So that'll be page 10 of the agenda. There's nothing too critical in that page either. Page 2, I just thought I'd just point out kind of halfway down, list all water treatment chemicals used. That's just that 12% sodium hypochlorite. That's just liquid chlorine. That's what we've been putting in, and we only put that in Granton. The levels are high enough that we don't have to put it in at the Lucan booster station. By the time it gets to the tower and goes, I believe that's 8 kilometers to Granton, it can be low. We have the opportunity to boost the chlorine if we have to. The next page is kind of microbiological testing. The raw and treated, we don't have raw water here. Because we're on the pipeline. So we just collect distribution samples here. We do 6 distribution samples per week. None of the 308 samples had E. coli or total coliforms. About a third of those samples we test for HPC, which is heterotrophic plate count. And with that number, there is no adverse limit for HPC. All it is kind of a water quality indicator of your distribution system. So if you received like 5 or 10 samples and the result was consistently 5,000 or 10,000, you might have to do some more flushing. You might have to, your system may need some work. Maybe there's old pipe in the ground and stuff. So, so that less than 10 to 40, that's very reasonable. And as for that, so all the NAs, the next couple pages of all the organic and inorganic sampling, we don't have to do. We get that, those results from Lake Huron Supply. And I do believe that the Lake Huron report is posted on the township website. If somebody does want to see those results, they are on there. The summary of lead there, again, we took one sample in April with the result 3.26 micrograms per liter, and one in October 0.35 micrograms per liter. And other than that, I hope I didn't go too fast.
Okay, thank you for that, Lucas. That was very straightforward, I think. And I think it was good that there was nothing red flagging and a good news report for the year. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I'm reading the report and the section on the results of mandatory testing, I'm just wondering, is it 2 samples a year? And when you say it was below, and you may have already answered that. So when it was below the regulatory limit, is it like just below? Is it far below? Is it something we need to think about, worry about? And are 2 tests enough?
You're referring to the lead?
Yeah, the lead, sorry, yeah.
Counselor,
Sorry.
yeah. So I think it should be okay because there is no municipal lead piping. If there's no piping in the ground, I don't know if we need to sample more. And the maximum limit, counselor, is 10 micrograms per liter, and one of them was 3.26. We're about a third.
Okay.
Third to the limit.
All right, okay, thank you. I have a second question. The second question is, I noticed too that there was a mention of the water tower. Does that get inspected as well? And is there anything that came up with that?
Yep, so we do a reservoir and tower. So every 5 years, we get somebody in and they inspect the Granton Reservoir and the Lucan Water Tower. And I believe the last one we did was in 2021. And there were no major concerns in their report. There was some minor sedimentation, but it didn't need any. So I think we're scheduled again in 2026 to do the next round of inspections.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Lucas, for the report and the presentation. I was just going to clarify, you made a point about the there not being any lead piping. Is that just like municipal water mains, or does that include services as well? I do think there's still some services out there that are lead.
Yeah, so there's no municipal water mains or municipal services up to the property line, to the curb stop. Anything from the curb stop or the property line to the house is private. So that's up. So there is some lead services from the municipal line to the house, but nothing municipal owned.
Okay, likely in the older residences.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and then I had one other question. How many staff does Jacobs have operating the water system in Lucan Biddulph?
Jacobs has 1 full-time staff, and then I am part-time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? 2 questions, and just to expand on what Councillor Hodgins said. So just to be clear, if there's lead from the curb stop to the home, it's up to the homeowner or the business owner, and they're fully responsible for that.
Yes, that is correct.
And then I've lost it, of course. My mouse is doing weird things. On the first page, like of the Ontario drinking water system, that's got the heading Ontario Drinking Water Systems Regulation. Number of designated facilities served, 3. So what are our 3 designated facilities?
Yeah, so I believe that is Lucan, Granton, and then we serve a small section of North Mid. That's the Clandeboy. There's a few houses. I can't remember. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Jeff, did you have any comment?
Yeah, I'd like to take the time on, not so much on the annual report, but I just like to it's a great chance for me to comment on a couple things that we've done in 2022 and a couple things we're looking at, or something that we're looking at in 2023. So one of the things that Lucas and myself, Jacobs and the township have worked on in 2022 is that we've been working with developers to have Jacobs on site pre-construction to talk about water main installation and water main testing and swabbing and cleaning and that sort of thing. So we've done a pretty good job in 22, starting that procedures and having that in place for a meeting. So I think that's done a really good job. And then in 2023, one of the things that I've talked to Lucas about, and it came up in some of our talk with the ministry, is that when they say we're doing 100%, that's great. That's wonderful. We're perfect, right? But you can always be better, right? So one of the things that Lucas and I are going to look at this year is to develop some written procedures. We're doing the right procedures. We're following all the right rules, but we're going to put it down on paper. And we're going to follow up with some procedures. I think we've outlined 3 or 4 procedures that we're going to develop and have in the book. So that's one of our goals for 2023. So just kind of a chance to just give council an idea what we're kind of working on. So
That's great. That's a great update. Thanks very much for that. If there is not any other comment or question, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the Lucan Biddulph Water Distribution Annual and Summary Reports for 2022 as presented. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Lucas. It's great. And as always, we're appreciative of the relationship that we have with Jacobs. I think I can speak on behalf of Jeff and his team that really happy with the relationship and how that's been built over the last couple of years or a few years. So thanks very much. It was good to see you. And I think some of us might see you in a few weeks at OGRA. So, okay, thanks. We'll move on to the minutes. And we have one set of minutes in front of us, and that is for February 21st. And I trust that everyone's had a chance to review them. If there's no errors or omissions or nothing has to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes as circulated. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, business arising from the minutes. I believe that there's been one item that was added, and that came from the discussion from the last meeting about procurement procedures and processes going forward. And so that will be, staff will bring a report back at some point during the spring. Was there anything else that staff wanted added to business arising? Okay. And we'll move on to the correspondence. So there's been one item that has been pulled that we've received. And it is a request from AMO, and it came from one of their watch files with regards to a homelessness resolution. And I hope that everybody's had a chance to read it. This is a direct request from AMO, and I would say it was also communicated to me through the mayor from Middlesex Center, Ina DeViet, who sits on the board of directors for AMO, and they're asking all the municipalities to adopt this resolution. So I'm looking for discussion. I would hope that there would not be any pushback on that. And if council is willing to accept that resolution, or if there's something that they want to change, this is just a suggestion from AMO, then I would look for an edit, but I would also look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Regan?
I'll
Okay.
move that we accept the resolution.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Westman. Was there any discussion on that? Councillor Westman?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lucan Biddulph is unique in that we don't have any obvious and visible homelessness in our community, but we do have people living very close to the bone. And, our economy took a big hit during COVID, and a lot of families are still struggling. And while homelessness is an obvious crisis that we need to really think about, we do have a lot of families in our community that are struggling and are very close to, losing their homes and things like that. It would be foolish to say otherwise, because I mean, I do know a lot of families that are living very tight budgets. So this is a good start, and I think that we should support it 100%.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from council? Okay, so I won't read the whole thing, but it will be on our agenda, obviously, for anybody that is watching us on YouTube. It's fairly lengthy. So we've got a mover and a seconder. All in favor of that resolution? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And to the balance of correspondence, we've received a number of items. Was there anything that anybody wanted to pull for discussion? Councillor Reagan.
Madam Mayor, there's two that I wanted to talk about. One, it's just more of maybe a question for Ron and Lisa, and there's a second one, if I may. The first one is number 9, about the future accuracy of the voters list. And when I was reading through it, I wasn't sure whether or not that was an issue that we had, if this is something we should be supporting going forward. I mean, again, I'm not sure who's going to be running next time, but again, it would always be nice to have a very accurate list. So I don't know if this was an issue in our municipality. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you, please.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Generally, yes, it is always an issue. I think for 2022, there were some unusual quirks, I would say. It was across all of the municipalities. I think we had some issues with the MPAC. Generally, our list before, because we are smaller, I guess it's an easier bit of a cleanup, but the list is far from perfect. It's just the bigger you get, the more issues you have. So.
Thank you. I'm just, Madam Mayor, if I may, I'm just wondering if we need to adopt this, if we need to do anything further with it. I'm not sure what kind of a problem they had in Ashfield, Coburg, but I'm not if that's something that we need to be doing. So again, I'm just looking for staff's sort of input.
Well, I think that there's been a number of discussion over the years, especially around in rural Ontario. I know I've heard it through Roma or, some of the smaller conferences where there was concern about the voters list. And especially when MPAC took over the management of it, I think they're hoping that with Elections Ontario or Elections Canada or whoever, that they'll be more easily managed. But I mean, certainly there's no reason if you want to at least support it, I think that it would be correspondence that could be forwarded on for sure.
Okay, I would like to make that motion if I could, that we would support this and we could bring this back at our next meeting and pass that resolution.
So do you want the same resolution as them?
Yes. Please, thank you. I have a second one, if I may. Just sort of in going along with what you said during your opening comments, the International Women's Day. The other one I wanted to just bring to council's attention was number 8, barriers for women in politics. There was a resolution that was adopted by the town of Grimsby. And I would just like to suggest or move that we adopt this resolution. There were 3 or 4 resolutions speaking just basically to the fact that you're embracing diversity and encouraging young women to enter into politics. And it talks a lot about we're an inclusive community, so it goes along with that. Plus what you just said earlier about perhaps maybe this resolution would help some women in Lucan Biddulph become trailblazers. I don't know, but I think we should do everything we can. So I think we should support this. And again, changing that wording just to change out town of Grimsby to the township of Lucan Biddulph.
Okay, any discussion on that request from council? No. Councillor Hodgins.
Just that I would support that motion to endorse this resolution, whatever the process is.
Thanks for that, Jayden. So do you want them both? So you want them both brought back
If I could, please,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Do you want a motion
Please.
for that? No? Okay, okay, instructions are fine, okay.
Okay.
So
thank you.
then the clerk's department will bring both those back at our next meeting and then we can endorse them and circulate as appropriate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Hodge, or Councillor Regan, I appreciate that. And Councillor Hodgins. And Councillor, did you have a comment, Councillor Hodgins?
I was just gonna draw attention to two other correspondence items.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just the items 2 and item 5 from the Sabo Bayfield Conservation Authority. Item 2 is the changes in service from Bill 23 that I alluded to last meeting. So there's some more detail in there for your review. And item 5 is the invitation to the Partner Appreciation Evening, which is next Thursday, March 16th. So I would encourage those interested in attending to RSVP and hope to see some of you out there.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I thought that the report that highlighted the changes in service was very detailed and appreciated that update. And I will be attending the partner appreciation, so I'll see you there. Was there any other items that council wanted to speak to from our correspondence list? Okay, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder that the items of correspondence be received for information purposes. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, on to committee reports. Blue Water,
No, we meet in a couple weeks.
CEDC. Councillor Regan, did you want to? Oh, your mic.
We had our first introductory meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was well attended. We have the minutes in front of us. I was more of just I think just of a meet and greet. We went through some of the community plan, through the strategic plan, talked a little bit about streetscape, talked about some of the grants that were available. And I believe our next meeting is March 29th. Is that correct? March 29th. Right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Lake Huron, which is me. And yes, we did have a meeting last week. And actually, it's a really good meeting. One of the exciting initiatives that they're taking on, and the agreement will be signed by the end of the month, is they're entering into an agreement with Oneida of the Thames. And so obviously this is an agreement with the federal government as well, because they will be funding a lot of this project, but we will be bringing water directly to Oneida of the Thames. So it's exciting. It's been years in the making. I've been on this board since 2010, and we've been talking about it in some form or fashion, about how we can do this, and to actually see it happening is very exciting. And of course, whenever I talk about it, I always say, we often see in the news about First Nations communities in rural Canada that don't have access to drinking water. And yet we don't think of it as being an issue in our backyard. And we do not have to drive half an hour from here. And we have neighbors that don't have access to clean drinking water. So this is a huge project, and the Lake Huron primary water supply system should be very proud of this partnership and the initiative and getting it to work. The other thing that we had a financial plan that was presented to us, and it was extremely interesting. Watson and Associates was the consultant that worked on this. And for anybody that's interested, the full plan with the executive summary, which is probably all you need to read, but it is, I think, in itself, the executive summary, I think, is about 7 or 8 pages anyways. It should be on the Lake Huron website, and if it's not, it will be in the next week or so. And it lays out a financial plan for our operating and our capital expenses for the next particular 10 years. So from a capital needs perspective, between now and 2032, we have $160 million worth of projects that we need to take on. And so with that, But I should say beyond that, so that the financial plans for 10 years, however, they did present a graph where they laid out the needs for infrastructure right up until 2085. And it was quite fascinating, actually, because as we all looked around and said, well, none of us will be here for that, which was a little depressing, but it was neat to see that they're looking that far out and they can get a sense of especially from an infrastructure replacement standpoint. So, but with that comes obviously a financial plan. And so for the next 10 years, there will be increases to the water rates that go to the benefiting municipalities. And for the next 6 years, so up until 2029, starting in 2024, our rates will increase by 5%, and after that, it'll be 4%. When you think about 5 and 4%, it sounds like a large number. Right now, our rate in actual dollars is just under 52 cents per cubic meter. And if you go until, so next year, raising it by 5% takes it to 54 cents. So they're incremental, but will make significant difference. That's for sure. And just to put things into perspective, when we think about the cost of water, and of course, this is to the benefiting municipality. So this is the cost to Lucan Biddulph. Right now, we pay 51.5194 cents per cubic meter. And that equates to 2,000 half-liter bottles. So of whatever, your pop, your water, if you go to buy a bottle of water. So it was funny when the consultant, when he used that analogy, he said, so that's 2,000 half-liter bottles. So just think about that when you go and you buy your bottle of Coke at your variety store, how much a half-liter bottle will cost you. And we're paying 51 cents, just under 52 cents per cubic meter for 2,000 bottles. So water is still, from your tap, is still a good deal. So that is the Lake Huron report. And with that, we'll move on to fire boards. Nothing from fire boards. ABCA, Jayden, just what you reported in correspondence. You haven't met since the last meeting, did you?
Correct. Nothing else to report. Next meeting's on the 16th.
Okay, thank you. Parks and Recreation.
Thank you to you, Madam Mayor. We did have some technical difficulties which didn't allow for the minutes to be uploaded in time for this agenda, but it will be in the next council package. But as a brief summary, Councillor Regan was elected chair of the committee and Todd Bailey was elected the vice chair of the committee. It was a very constructive meeting. It was great to sit down with all the new and returning members in person. And two of the topics that were large discussions will be presented in my staff reports later tonight. Another topic that had some discussion was the development of the new skate park or all wheels park in Lucan. At the previous session of PRAC, potential location was suggested for Elm Street Park. And this did generate some community concerns and questions. So staff felt it was warranted that more discussion at the PRAC level before moving forward with this project was warranted. And to note, some of the companies that we've reached out to determine costing for development charges had mentioned that they were already booking into 2024. So due to the specialized nature of this field, we feel a PRAC recommendation for 2024 budget target would be appropriate for it. This is a good goal for PRAC to focus on.
Okay, any questions on that?
Yeah, except the meeting, I don't think it was very clear on the, was it going to be funded? We're going to have to look for a grant where we're going to have to, what's the community going to have to fundraise, but and that's where I was a little bit confused because I felt that again, the consequence of the arena renovations and obviously that being taken down, that it would be replaced. So I assume it will be just replaced with the funds in the in reserves or at that time or part of the expenses.
All right, staff reports, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report before council tonight is the extension of the fire inspection services agreement. We currently are serviced with Mr. Steve Gay. His agreement ran out at the end of last year. He has since agreed to stay on. We are fortunate in that one of our existing volunteer firefighters is taking courses to be a certified fire inspector. That's going to take some time. We figure it's going to take about 2 years worth of time. And Mr. Gay has agreed to extend his contract in order to mentor the volunteer firefighter until he's ready to assume full control. So we are very thankful to Mr. Gay for doing that for us. It's been a very good working relationship between him and the township. So we are very thankful. You can see in the analysis there's only 3 minor changes to the existing agreement. One was regarding the 500 per year for office and other expenses. That was never used, so we've just deleted it. And the number of hours, we've reduced that based on past practice, and that's been reduced down to an estimated 100 hours per year. And then there was a grammatical correction to section 13. So it's a fairly simple, straightforward 2-year extension on Mr. Gay's agreement. And we are happy to put that forth for council.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Any questions on that agreement? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just one really quick question. What are the duties of the fire inspector?
That's a good question, actually.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Hodgins. Primarily, the duties of the fire inspector is to go around to the various commercial and multi-unit residential buildings to undertake annual inspections. So they do fire safety inspections. They do our public buildings as well. So they're done typically on an annual basis. And anytime there's a fire where they get called out to inspect what happened, what caused something. Those don't happen too often, touch wood, because we've been very fortunate. We do not get many structure fires anymore. And he's also called out periodically based on somebody's request. So if somebody has a request, they need something inspected. One that comes to mind recently was there was a grant program to get migrant workers into a bunkhouses, I guess you could call something like that, and they need to be formally inspected in order to comply with the federal wage program. So those are just some examples.
Thank you very much.
Hey, any other questions on that? Then sorry, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to that report CAO-02-2023 be received for information and that council ratify a contract extension with Mr. Steve Gay regarding fire inspection services. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. Next report, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report is the Fire Services Master Plan. As council may recall, the RFP was issued at the beginning of this year. We sent it out to five companies. 2 of them submitted proposals. One was Bear Integrated Solutions. The other one was Emergency Management. What's their specific name? Emergency Management and Training Inc. out of Barrie. So of the 5 that were mailed out, 2 were returned. When they were returned, we had a group consisting of both fire chiefs, Steve Tays from Biddulph Blanchard and Chief Rhonda Brower from Lucan Biddulph, as well as both board chairs, Dave Goddard in the case of Lucan Biddulph and Mayor Kathy Burkhardt Jessen as the chair of the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board, as well as myself. We sat down, we scored them, and we came up with a unanimous decision to suggest or to recommend to council that Bear Integrated Solutions be awarded the proposal. And their proposal was the cheapest of the 2. And I would note that my earlier report had a technical grammatical error on the dollar amount. That has since been corrected. The correct numbers are on the report in front of council tonight. So if you uploaded it after, I think Tina made the correction around 4 o'clock. So the numbers for Bear Integrated Solution is $55,075 plus taxes. Emergency Management and Training Inc.'s proposal was 56,940 plus taxes and travel expenses. So Bears was an all-inclusive 55,000. So again, the impact of budget, we're utilizing the modernization funding, and there was a budget allocation of 60,000 for this project. So happy to answer any questions. The recommendation is for council to award the Fire Services Master Plan to Bear Integrated Solutions.
They had a shorter timeline too.
That is correct. Yes.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Anna Mary. You just, I think you answered my question. I just wanted to know when we can expect, I'm on the fire board, so I've just wanted when we could expect this Fire Services Master Plan to be presented to council.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan, the date proposed by Bear is the end of July, that they will have the finished product by the end of July 2023.
Thank you, Ron.
Any other questions on this report with regards to the RFP award? Yep.
If they, is there any concern if they were running, is there any concern if they were all of a sudden October, November, December, keeping them online or not really? Like, is there a reason why we'd want it earlier? Eventually we'll want it because we expect service what we pay for. There'll be a time, but there's no timeline staff was hoping for.
No, we did not give them a deadline. We didn't say it had to be done by September 1st or anything like that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And just so council knows too, that there will likely be communication expected. There'll probably be a session about the services that we offer our community, the fire services. So whether that's an in-person or you know, a Zoom call or something, and then they'd also be doing that at the board levels as well. Stakeholder engagement. Yes, that was the word. That was the word I was looking for. So yeah, so there'll be interviews and a survey, and it'll talk about the services that we offer, that we have for our residents. So, okay, and a board engagement. Okay. So with that, the motion in front of us is that report number CAO-03-2023 be received for information, and that council awards the Fire Services Master Plan to Bear Integrated Solutions as per their submission dated February 13th, 2023. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that is carried. Did you have any verbals, Ron? Okay, Tina.
I tend to do that, don't I?
That's right.
I just want to mention there is a bylaw included in the bylaws tonight. Oh, there's a few, but there is one there just appointing a division registrar and deputy division registrar, which is currently the clerk and this deputy clerk, but we are adding an additional to that just in the slight chances that both the clerk and the deputy clerk are absent, then the administrative assistant can fulfill that requirement.
Thank you for that. Finance, Catherine.
Thank you. The one report I have in front of you tonight is just for your information. It's our annual statement of the remuneration and expenses paid to council in 2022. And that is per legislation has to be presented before March 31st each year. So the information there is attached with the details, and they are unaudited, but I'm confident that they are true. So that's all that is.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Catherine. I do need a mover and a seconder to receive report number FIN-05-2023 for information. I guess before I call it, is there any question or any comment on that one? So Councillor Hodgins, are you moving that? Yep. Councillor Hodgins and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. So we don't have planning. Public Works. Jeff, do you have anything verbal? No, nothing verbal. And Paul.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. The first report in front of council this evening is with reference to extension of the soccer field lease agreement with the Van Giel Corporation. This is just an extension of the previous soccer field usage lease that we had used in previous years. This is just to retain the field for the 2023 season, as they've deemed it's acceptable to extend that. They don't see any issues for that. This will allow for further development of our soccer field complex.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Paul. Any questions or comments on that? Counselor Hodgins?
Thank you. Is there a cost or a fee associated with this for us to lease that land for the fields?
So just for this agreement, we cover the taxes on the property.
Okay, and then second question, with the nearby construction of the Sobel Field subdivision, and still some things going on at the arena, where will the access and parking be for the fields? Is that sorted out?
It will still be from our parking lot at the community center. At that time, we will have the new parking lot available for the community members to access the field, as well as the end of, what is the new street called? Scotts Drive. They could go by foot through the development. There will be fencing blocking off the construction of the townhomes from the soccer complex, just to prevent anyone going through the actual construction site itself.
Great, thank you, Paul.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? And the motion in front of us is that report number PR-03-2023 be received for information, and that council pass a bylaw authorizing execution of the lease extension agreement with 1525020 Ontario Incorporated. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Next report, Paul.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The next report in front of council this evening is in reference to the implementation of a programming rate and the setting of a new rate for the multipurpose hall. Previously, in August of 2019, the Boys and Girls Club had approached Lucan Biddulph in regard to offering programs where there was a gap, where they felt they could offer assistance where there was gap in services. Due to the non-for-profit model, they had difficulty paying the full rate of the active living center. And then through council direction, we were able to offer a trial reduced rate of $50 an hour, which on the final review was still difficult they found to run a successful program. Internally, our Parks and Rec department has had difficulty recruiting and retaining specialized program instructors to offer a variety of programming. We have had some success partnering with community members and the Boys and Girls Club to be able to offer programs that were well received by community members. And this type of partnership is promoted in the Parks and Rec Master Plan. We should note, though, that currently there is only one of these programs still running, and the Boys and Girls Club has discussed difficulties to return, all mentioning difficulty providing affordable registration while being able to offer programming. As our new hall opens, we want to ensure there's a good variety of program options for the community to utilize this space. A program rate offers a good incentive for non-for-profits and community partners to provide a variety of programs where there is a missing gap currently. This was discussed at PRAC at good length, and then there was good support for this concept as a way to increase opportunities for programming. PRAC did recommend that this be brought forward to council. Similar to some of the examples provided, this does weigh community benefit against capacity to offer specialized program. All rentals that apply for this rate must meet the criteria demonstrated in the definition provided. As the majority of the prep and planning and setup of each rental would rest on the program provider, little staff time would be associated with each rental. As staff feels as though the presented rate of $30 an hour inclusive HST would be an appropriate rate to begin at for this rental. Furthermore, with the amendment to the fees bylaw, staff has presented a rental rate in comparison of the new space to the Lions Active Living Center and the main hall. Please note that there's currently a standalone rate for the kitchen, which would be applied to any rentals requiring to use this space at this hall at an additional cost. This approach does align with several key recommendations presented in the Parks and Rec Master Plan, as well as the strategic plan. Specifically, undertake program planning in coordination with community partners in response to local needs with an emphasis on low-cost services that promote physical activity and social inclusion for children, youth, and older adults / seniors. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Any questions or comments on this report from Paul? Council or Deputy Mayor Manders?
Just now, these rates there would be no expectations of a setup or tear down, I assume. This is just, and that would be known to the parties and all this.
Yeah, so prior to agreeing to the program rate, we'd have to sit down and make sure that their program does meet our definition. And part of that discussion we've outlined in this report here. And again, we will emphasize to anyone wanting to utilize this rate that would be a requirement of the programmer to return the hall to its condition when we returned it. And, you know, it's felt that this would allow us to keep our costs low while still providing a good opportunity to provide these programs.
And then obviously if there is staff time or setup, then you could adjust accordingly, and then it's not part of this program anyways.
Absolutely. And even, you know, if there's any damages related to anything going on, that would be addressed accordingly as well.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Hodgins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the report, Paul. I like the how you align it to the Parks and Rec master plan recommendations. It's good to highlight that. My question is the programming rate of $30 an hour. Does that apply to all the hall rentals, or is this just for the new multi-purpose hall?
The idea is to have to attend to the halls utilizing programs. So we do have a gym rate. So in here we identify under the definition. So for instance, a sports team wanting to use the gym space, we do have a fairly affordable rate for that right now. That would not apply to this. It's strictly meant for programming, and that would be for the Lions Active Living Center as well.
Okay, is that also for the main hall?
It would depend on the definition of their program for that. Right now, they would rent it for like a gym rate it's fairly affordable for youth and adults.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So just further on to Deputy Mayor Manders' point. So and they're not using any of our equipment, so they would bring everything for their own programming.
Anything that is required for their program beyond maybe utilizing some of our tables and chairs that were present.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there aren't any other comments, then the motion in front of us is that report number PR-04-2023 be received, and that council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the fees bylaw to incorporate the following proposed rates: the programming rate of $30, HST included. Okay, a multi-purpose hall rate is a full day rate of $300 plus HST, and a multi-purpose hall rate hourly, which is $60 an hour plus HST. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you again. The next report in front of council, it was also discussed at the PRAC meeting, and the purpose of this is to seek council's approval for the establishment of a subcommittee of PRAC, which of a youth advisory subcommittee. At the PRAC meeting, it was discussed that adding youth membership to the committee may provide valuable perspectives that are not currently represented on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. In the past, youth community members have been invited to participate in the selection of new play structures in Lucan Biddulph, and their involvement in this process received very positive feedback. Providing more opportunities for youth involvement encourages an engaged community while promoting volunteerism and community pride. Providing an opportunity for youth in our community to express their needs is a positive avenue, and it consider their recommendations regarding parks and recreation. It can also allow them insight into how municipalities function, and we recognize the value that it can provide correct and accurate information to their peers and parents regarding parks and recreation activities in Lucan Biddulph. When discussing youth membership at PRAC, it was recommended these members be added as a subcommittee. This would allow for the youth members to only attend meetings with a primary focus on youth-specific items, keeping both their interest and focus on the task at hand. It was recommended that this be comprised of grades 7 and 8 and secondary students, and this would change on an annual basis as interests for this age group do vary drastically from year to year. They do have the opportunity to reapply should they want to continue, as it is a hope that this will encourage future possibly municipal employees or counselors or people who just want to be volunteered in the community. This is a similar approach that has been done by Middlesex Center, which has had great success with their youth advisory committee. They cited specifically that it provides a meaningfully constructive voice for youth of Middlesex Center while advising council on the important social, recreation, and lifestyle issues concerning the municipality's younger population. Additional information to consider is that this can contribute to youth volunteer hours, and there is a heavy focus on youth in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So the including of a youth advisory subcommittee for PRAC would be appropriate to truly reflect community needs. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Paul. I think that's exciting. Certainly, yeah, I mean, could be grooming leaders of the future. So congratulations, PRAC, for bringing that forward. Any comment or questions from council on that report? Councillor Hodgins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I agree, very exciting. And yeah, certainly we have a lot of positive impacts for the youth and our community. First question to Paul, the age bracket from 12 to 17. I think I noticed that Middlesex Centers was 9 to 17. So I was just wondering how we landed on 12 and whether we should consider opening that up just to not restrict attendance for getting volunteers for this committee.
I believe at the PRAC meeting, this age group was the recommended age group. It is a pilot project. I think if it is successful, I think at that time it'd be appropriate to open up for that. But to start with, offering grades 7, 8, and then probably, high school to 17 would be the recommended age group to start.
Okay. And I was going to ask, you kind of answered one of my questions already, saying that Middlesex Center is having great success with theirs. So that's great to hear, because I was wondering if it was going to be challenging to find people to sit on it. And maybe it's a little bit challenged to maybe retain people just because they're youth. And I think you alluded to that in your report. But do we have a sense whether there are local youth willing or interested in participating in this committee yet? Or have we engaged any of the schools to look at if there's interest in this?
We do not have a sense at the moment. At the PRAC meeting, it was discussed that one of the avenues we will be doing is reaching out to guidance counselors because they would already have the students in mind that may be interested to kind of gear them this way, especially if they're part of a young leadership program or so forth.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, the last maybe comment and question is just, I think it'll be great to, I guess, engage with the local schools and find to recruit some volunteers through that for the committee, and maybe working with local teachers or administration at the school and building those relationships. And perhaps there's an opportunity with looking at the composition of the committee. Maybe there are adult leaders within the schools that would be interested in sitting on the board as well. So maybe that's something that could be considered either now or in the future, whether there is those sort of adult people that work with kids regularly and could help be leaders in the committee as well. But very exciting, and thanks for the report.
Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I think I can find a source of young people that'll be interested through our scouting and guiding community. Some of our senior scouts and guides are encouraged through the badge program and through our guidance leadership to seek that very thing that you guys are looking for. So if you could send me some detail on that, I will certainly share it with our scout and guide groups, and I think that'll yield some good results for you.
Any further comment? Okay, so the motion in front of us is that report number PR-05-2023 be received, and that the creation of a youth advisory committee, and I'm not going to use the acronym because I'll just call it the Youth Advisory Committee, as a subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee be approved, and that the terms of reference for the committee as appended to the report PR-05-2023 be approved, and further that staff be redirected to move forward with seeking youth members to fill vacant seats. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. And once again, I think everybody has commented. Congratulations to PRAC for bringing this forward. Did you have anything else verbal to offer, Paul?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few verbal updates. We did submit our application for the seniors community grant last week. We did approach the avenue that was increasing program offerings and decreasing social isolation geared towards older adults and seniors. The avenue we approached, we are going to be providing 3-week workshops on various hobbies and activities that had been requested with consultation to community groups and programs. Specifically, there will be technology, Tai Chi, self-defense, baking, painting, nutrition, pickleball, and balance. So we're hopeful that we have aligned it very well. Abby did a very good job. I give a big commendment to her. She's done great work on this, so I'm hopeful that we'll be successful on that. Secondly, just a quick update with regard to soccer complex change house. We're currently looking at the scope of the proposed project with engineers to see if we can align it with funding opportunities to better align with those. Lastly, and I'm sure community members have reached out to councillors regarding some of these concerns. Due to the rapid change in weather that we've seen recently, and we've seen a drastic change to the ice snow accumulation on the northeast end of the community center. Previously in years, this was a rare occurrence. It was maybe once, twice in a season where there'd be an overhang, and maybe near the end of March, we'd see a thaw and snow would fall, and we'd put out barricades to help protect it. But due to the rapid change in climate, we're seeing this on an ongoing basis, and it is becoming a safety concern. So we have, just so everyone's aware, we have reached out to contractors to give us advice on some better solutions to defeat that issue.
Thanks for the verbal. Any questions on that? So with the soccer complex building, do you think you're going to have it for this year, or has the timeline changed? So in terms of loan funding, we're looking at making sure our timeline still aligns with it, but we're not quite happy with some of the pricings that we've been hearing back on, from when we first looked at loan application. So we are trying to see if there's green initiatives that we could apply to this project. And obviously, when you do those, you have to balance the extra costs. Is it going to get us that funding, and is it going to be worth the application? So obviously, we always want to support green initiatives, but we also don't want to vastly increase the project because of that. But we are hoping to better align with some of those funding opportunities. Okay. And so again, do you think that will allow us to build it this year or next year?
It's difficult to determine that at this time, but we will be hopefully presenting a report to councils in the near future.
Okay, thanks for that. Economic development.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I have a few reports in front of you tonight. The first one is regarding 22 report for Lucan Summerfest. The numbers are there in front of you. We talked with staff about how best to cover off this deficit for the for 22, and the recommendations are in there. After consulting with Catherine, we provided a couple of options to cover off the deficit for the year. So again, just looking for council's direction on how to cover that, and open to questions about that as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Lisa. Comments or questions from council? Deputy Mayor Manders?
I guess just on the for the funds, I guess my input would be it was a 20, like last year's expense 2022. So if possible, if there is a surplus, it would just come out of that. And if it won't cover it, then the balance out of tax stabilization. I guess that's my input would be if the surplus, that's what it should, if we have a surplus, and that should cover that expense towards it.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hodgins, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just had a question, and maybe it's more for Catherine, but I was looking back, and so wasn't there a budget of 120,000 for this event? And then like, I guess there's revenue coming in. So isn't there like a net cost of 30,000? So isn't there adequate budget to cover the, I guess, the net cost of the event? Or am I not thinking about that correctly? Or was the event intended to be like, you know, I guess revenues cover the expenses, and it's like a.
At the time of budget, initially the event was supposed to have $120,000 in revenue with $60,000 of expenses, with the difference surplus going into reserves for future events. But then in 2022, they added a concert as well, and among other things, and then the numbers here reflect what actually happened. So we brought in 120,000 in revenue, but we spent 150,000. So we're actually short $30,000 that wasn't intended to, that event in the budget time wasn't supposed to be covered by taxes at all. So now it's identified we have this sort of deficit from it, then it's just, the question is, how are we going to fund that? Just be part of the 2022 numbers surplus, or if, which I expect there will be surplus to cover it, or if you want to do something more specific to cover that. But there is definitely a shortfall from 2022 event as described in the report.
Okay, that answers my question. I think I was just thinking about it incorrectly with the net amount with the revenues and the budget amount. If I could ask about, I was wondering about the sponsorship. Was the sponsor the Great Escape RV, or are there other sponsors as well, or just the one?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor. So the sponsorship on the revenue line, that included the Great Escape into that 57. That was as pure in and out though. But so I think the difference was like, we brought in like 21,000, I guess, separate from the Great Escape donation.
Okay. I was wondering about the expenses. It has the Rock Night acts, and it says paid by Great Escape sponsorship for 36,000. And I was just wondering why that's included as an expense if it was paid for by the third party.
Oh, I wanted to demonstrate so that if you looked at these numbers and compared it to our budget actual reports that will be coming forward, that you'll be able to see these numbers as they stand. I didn't want to start netting things out. We always post revenues into revenues and expenses into expenses. We don't try to net them out in those forms. So if you ever compared these numbers to what we have in our financials, you'll be able to track it. That's why it's presented that way. So in the end, it is in essence in and out, but I wanted to make sure we balance back to our reports.
Okay, thanks. And my last question, I think was there revenue to the township for a cash bar or any alcohol sales, or is that kind of built into those revenue, the sponsorship revenue numbers, or did that go to a different party?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So we, back in 2019, when we started the concert series, we came to the agreement with the Lions Club that they would take over and run the bar, and they would keep the proceeds of the bar, so that we know that the community, those funds raised at those events, eventually they're kind of come back to our community. So it was kind of we felt very much a win-win situation for the community and for the Lions and us. It kind of worked out to a beneficial relationship.
Okay, that's great news. Do we know what that revenue was for the Lions Club?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, thanks, Jaden. Any other questions or discussion on that? Okay, then we do have the motion, and it is the recommended motion in front of us, and it aligns with with what the deputy mayor said. And that is that the council directs staff to fund the 2022 Summerfest deficit of $30,177.11 from a possible budget surplus. And if the budget surplus is not sufficient, then fund the deficit through tax rate stabilization. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, did you want to continue on, Lisa?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one other thing regarding, so the 23 Summerfest, I kind of want to briefly kind of touch base with council about the plans for that. Obviously, considering the 22 outcomes, we decided that maybe we would still continue on a form of a concert, much smaller scale. I figure probably like we're going to allocate only 10,000 towards it, scale it down. The sponsoring partner would like to come in again at the same matching expense. So we would keep the max expenses would come in at 10,000 for us, and then 10,000 for them as well. And same agreement would be 50% of ticket sales, but the max would be 10,000 regardless of our expenses. And so by that, we're keeping it smaller, local bands. You wouldn't have the expenses that you had before between hotels and those sort of things. Smaller stage, everything's kind of scaled back down. So it'd be more of a, like I said, a much smaller event. On the concert, daytime stuff will look the same sort of things, bouncies, little events during the day, those sort of things. Unsure what the Legion is planning at this point. They're going to get back to me on that. So I wanted to bring that forward. If council has any concerns, maybe we can just quickly talk about that now, because obviously time is of the essence. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Comments and questions on that? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Would that sponsorship agreement come back to council, or is that handled administratively?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, we would bring it forward.
Thank you.
Do you have follow-up, Councillor Hodgins?
No follow-up.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thanks.
A good idea and strategy to maybe smaller scale event, but I like the idea of keeping with the concerts. It was well received and I think successful.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
I just wanted to point, I think we wanted to kind of keep the momentum going a bit and not totally get rid of it. I think we just wanted to kind of keep a concert going in some form. So that was kind of the point of continuing it on.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? So do you think that sponsors, because I agree, it's March. So if you're going to go ahead, you pretty much have to plan it yesterday. But do you think then at the next meeting or the first meeting in April, you'd have that sponsorship agreement for review?
I would like to have it for the next meeting, obviously considering times of the essence to kind of organize it.
Okay, and then just on, and maybe, obviously, if you bring that forward, there'd be a more formal report, but that 10,000, is that already built into the Summerfest budget that was approved at budget time?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion? All right. Did you want to continue on, Lise?
Yes, thank you through you, Madam Mayor. So before you tonight, we have a draft communication plan that we've been working on. Just for council's review. I think it goes through some of the important parts of what we've been always talking about, how important it is to find the right way to communicate with our residents, what mediums that includes, but not only externally, is how best we communicate internally as well. So within the plan, I would guess the first part would be where I would expect some discussion maybe from council on goal number 1. I know we've kind of talked about it for over the years, and that would be, so that's on page 15. And the goal would be to create new visual standards and a branding. So that could possibly be a new logo. Obviously, we'd still keep the official one for certain things, but as we see some of our neighboring municipalities are starting to move forward on some new fresh branding, and we've kind of discussed maybe this is a good opportunity with the new council, new term, to go for a new vision of what that might look like. And our branding then would move forward on all of our sort of communications, everything will be standardized again. So if you follow different municipalities, they have a very standard, when they post something, it looks all the same every time. So it continues your branding through everything. But I guess the biggest thing is the logo discussion. And if council is open to having that exercise of going through this. So other than that, I think the rest of it's pretty external, internal. Some of the goals are, very much staff kind of orientated, but I wanted to have that discussion on goal number 1.
So are you looking to do so that exercise, are you looking to bring somebody in, or do you think that you can host it as essentially like a strategic plan session? So you'd bring everybody in and that sort of thing. Would you engage the public in that, or strictly council?
I think the idea would to bring someone in, to much like a strategic plan exercise, that could get us to what that logo might look like in the branding exercise with that. I do think public consultation is important in this because some people are quite attached to the current township logo. And I think there'd be fears out there that that's gone to the wayside. And I think communication on this is still the township logo, official logo, but this sort of a new branding would be for communications and those sort of things. So I think, yes, public engagement would be involved as well.
Okay. All right. Comment or question from council? Do you have your hand up, Deputy Mayor? No. Councillor Regan?
I was just wondering too about bringing in community economic development, because I'm reading through this and I just see a lot of opportunities for services, functions, business opportunities. And those are a lot of the stakeholders in the community as well. When you talk about public, like the public involvement and that sort of thing. So you have to involve all that. And I just thought it was something for economic development to consider as well. It's just a comment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Manders?
Yeah, I guess I never felt the logo was, it was a concern. I putting staff time and exercise and expense into that. I don't think I see it warranted at this time, but the communication is a big concern, I think, of our community, and getting constant communication out as a, and the brand being part of our logo, our existing logo, to me is fine. I again, we do a lot of things to try to communicate, and it just seems like nothing is perfect, but streamline our communication or consistent. I'm not on personally on Facebook, but I know people have said before there's, I don't even know, does Lucan Biddulph have 3 Facebook posts at like the township, EDC, and another one? Again, they just feel, how and why and when do you look at which Facebook post, and they just find that confusing. And I couldn't imagine, like, I don't know a company a business or anybody that floats three same channels. They'll do a LinkedIn, a Twitter, and a Facebook, but having 3 Facebooks, I don't even know if this is what you're talking about. I hope it's, multiple lines of communication, but not multiple Facebook posts and adding another Facebook, like we got 3 and adding a 4th or something. But, the communication to me, yeah, logo, I'm not interested at this time myself, but.
Well, I think that it's addressed in there about streamlining your communication and, all of that. I think it's all laid out there in the plan. So, and I think that would come out of it. Do you need, economic development, Middlesex County has 3 pages. That's just economic development. So maybe that does come out of it, but you've got to go through your communication plan to get to that point, right? Councillor Hodgins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I was just going to make the comment that I do think that communication is, like, Lucan Biddulph has pretty strong communication compared to what I've seen in some other neighboring or in other municipalities and other areas. And I want to commend staff for all the communication efforts. I'm a big fan personally of the mail out newsletter. I always have been since I moved here. I always appreciated those 1-pagers that come in the mail, and other things like the community guide are great as well. With respect to the communications plan, I did have the same comment and thoughts as Councillor Regan of bringing this to CEDC just for getting some more ideas and maybe some feedback and comments prior to it being finalized. And also just looking at the plan. I really like the goals and objectives section with the very tangible actions with target dates. I think that's great. And using it sort of like a master plan or like a bit of a living document that can regularly be updated, and you kind of keep an eye on those target dates and try to hit those. Another thought I had on it was that maybe adding a table of contents might help to navigate the document. With respect to the branding and the logo, I'm supportive of that. I think maybe it's a worthwhile exercise. I think other places have done that as well, and just kind of brought consistent standard across everything. However, recognizing, I guess, the sensitivities with the logo, and everybody loves the logo. So, I have the same opinion there with the beaver and the logo and the history there. But certainly, I think it's a worthwhile exercise, and probably not overly expensive necessarily, working with a consultant or a graphic designer. And it would just kind of freshen everything up across all our platforms. Those are my comments. I don't think I have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hodgins. Any other comments or questions? So I think you've done a great job. I would echo what Councillor Hodgins had about everything that's in there. So a couple of questions though come to mind, Lisa, and it has to do, and I think they're great, that the objectives and with your timelines, but you've got everything, I think, pretty much 2023 and ongoing. So are all of these, like, do you really think that they're all realistic for you to, a lot of this is you've already undertaken, and I think formalizing it will help with the departments that we've got, and bringing everybody up, in line, so to speak. But, do you think that realistically you can start undertaking some of the new initiatives in this year, or is it better to phase it in between 2023 and 2024?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think because everything's so attached to each other, and it's hard to do one thing without doing the other thing, and so that's kind of why I went with the 2-year kind of 23 and 24, because a lot of these are quick wins, just for sake of staff meetings. Okay, well, we can initiate that certain things right away, or different things like that. There's a lot of quick wins in this document. So I do think it's manageable, but I mean, like I said, it's a living document. So, we revisit in a year and see, okay, where we're at, where, what's missing, what haven't we done yet? What have we done yet? And what's been well working and not working. So I think it's to revisit it in a year and kind of regroup and reevaluate would be a good idea as well.
Okay, thank you. And I would agree, like I do agree that you've got some great public members on the CEDC. I just worry about, blurring those lines of what the CEDC's brand is and what the Township of Lucan Biddulph's brand is. But certainly, I think engagement with them makes sense because obviously they're, all boots on the ground in the community. I, for one, am a big fan of branding exercises because I do think it brings life back into an organization and kind of revitalizes the look of something. And certainly I like our official township logo, and that can certainly be, I think, used on an official basis. But I think for communications, it's great to kind of get that eye-catching brand that kind of speaks to everybody. So I would certainly be in favor of you looking at how that can be done. I would agree with Councillor Hodgins. I think it's a fairly minimal expense that you could work with a graphic artist and do some public engagement with. So I, for one, would be in favor of that. Any other comments or questions on that? There is a motion then in front of us, and that is that report number. Okay, let me read this. I guess. Yeah. Did you want, I guess maybe I should ask to clarify with Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, before council approves it, did you want the plan to go back to CEDC for a look? Or, I mean, we've got the next couple of weeks ourselves to review it in depth and can get back to Lisa. But did you want the CEDC to review the communication plan too?
I think that would be wise, and I would like to do that. Yes. Yeah.
So then the motion is to bring back the draft communications plan at our next meeting. So it would have to be then the April meeting.
Correct. So we're meeting on the 29th. So we could do that on the 29th. And we could have it out to everyone so they can review it first.
Okay.
If that's agreeable to council.
I said we could change the motion to at an upcoming meeting
Yes, please.
or future meeting. I
Future
guess.
meeting. Yes, please.
Okay. All right, then that motion now in front of us is that report number EDC 02-2023 be received, and that council direct staff to bring forward the draft communications plan at a future meeting with any amendments if required for approval. A mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor, and that's carried. And yeah, put a lot of work into that, Lisa. So that was a good report with, and I would encourage council to really go through the report and the plan. And if you see anything that you want highlighted to communicate that back to Lisa. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last report for me tonight is just more of a general update for council. The first first section of this report, we talk about just updating everyone on our YouTube page, what subscribers we're having, how many people are viewing. So it's good kind of interested for council to kind of see how many are watching and, you know, how much that YouTube ability has now increased, you know, the people's viewing of our council meetings. It's obviously more accessible now than just coming to the meeting. Another point that I want to bring up, I know I've been talking about it probably for a couple of years, is developing a mobile app that basically mimics our website that people download. They're pretty inexpensive to develop. And so I'm just in the middle of kind of looking for some prices and some different options for what that might look like if we do move forward with developing an app. The nice thing about the apps too is you can push notifications. So if Public Works has an emergency, roads closed, something happens at the community center, programming changes, those sort of things. It's nice to, or reminders, you can push reminders, tomorrow's garbage recycling day, tomorrow's tax day. So it's nice to be able to push those things if people allow it on their phone, to push notifications in that way through an app. There's some really nice municipal apps out there. And those are, to me, those are the best features, is those alerts that people can download to their phone. Really quite handy. Wanted to mention a few outreach things we're doing. Mayor Kathy mentioned the International Women's Day that we're having tomorrow afternoon, which is great. We also did a Women's Day contest through our Facebook page for nominations for women in business. And so I've received over, I think it's 20 different nominations from different women in the community for a total of like almost 60 nominations. So it's good to see that there's someone nominating 22 individuals in our community for this little prize gift certificate. So we'll do that tomorrow. Mayor's breakfast, we're bringing it back now that COVID's over, but we're thinking about doing that in the fall. The annual pitch-in and e-waste day scheduled for April 22nd. So mark that down your calendars. If council again wants to come out and help clean up with the Scouts and Guides, and they'll have their e-waste day at the Market Street Park. We have ordered some seedlings through ABCA. We're just not sure when we'll get them on time, depending on when harvest is. With this weather, I don't know when harvest will be. So we'll see. Hopefully we get them close to that date. And when we do get them, we'll figure out, if it's not on the 22nd, we'll figure out a nice way to distribute them to the community. Probably a pickup sort of thing at Market Street Park like we've had before. Quick economic development update. We submitted the RED program, the grants. I kind of put in what those 3 programs that we submitted for, the 3 projects. We continue to work on phase 2. We've got interest comes in frequently on phase 2 of the industrial park. It's more, how does it work with maybe there's lots of moving parts to it. Let's just put it that way. If someone comes in and wants 20 acres or 10 acres, there's different things. So Ron and I continue to work with potential people and try and figure out ways that we can develop this property. I think that's really it. That just has some other points that we're working on EDC wise, and just my role as economic development. Just wanted to give council a little summary of things that are happening. That's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update, Lisa. Questions or comments on this report? Councillor Regan.
Just one very quick comment. So at the Community Economic Development Committee meeting, one of the big things we talked about was one of the points, creating a business after 5 breakfasts to encourage connectivity and information among businesses. That seemed to be a big thing with everyone that was in that meeting, about just, they were mentioning that they see people on the street who own businesses, but they don't really talk to them. I don't know, not because they're mean, it's just because they don't have the opportunity. So we thought about making that as an opportunity to share business ideas. So I just thought that was a good idea that came up out of that committee, and I just wanted to mention it. It was as it was written there. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other? Councillor Westman.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I gotta say that my ears perked up when they're talking about that app, the idea of using an app. My employer uses an app called First Up. We've customized it for the company. And we reach out to all the employees. We can deliver every kind of imaginable information to them that they need, production scheduling, safety alerts, all kinds of stuff, including like we have some morale boosting events and things like that. So it's been very effective. And as soon as that was mentioned, my ears perked up. I think it's a great idea and we should pursue that immediately.
Thank you for that comment. I think we all thought that that was, you can see the benefits of it for sure. Any other questions or comments from this report of Lisa's? Okay, then we have a motion in front of us that report number EDC 03 2023 be received for information. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Just very quick, just want to let everybody know the Lucan Irish are playing tomorrow night, 8:45, first round of the playoffs against Temford. Just to let everybody know to come out and support.
Yes, they play tonight at 9 o'clock in Chelmsford is the first game. And there, I thought it would have happened today, but I've heard through the grapevine that I might be being challenged by the mayor of Zuro. Since it's first round, so we'll see. It should have happened by now. I think it should happen before the puck drops, but anyways, we'll see. Any other councillor comments? Yep.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, just wanted to thank our good roads folks that were out removing all that snow that hit us rather by surprise. I know they worked hard in keeping the sidewalks clear, moving the snow off Main Street. I understand we're going to be doing the same over in Granton in the next few days. So it's a big task and the team really handled it, but we're really well. So thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Westman. I think we would all agree that there was lots of extra work put in the last couple of weeks. So thanks to the team. Any other councillor comments? Okay, with that, then there's no changes to budget. Any notices of motion? So we'll move, and the counts aren't up today, so we'll move right into bylaws. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bylaws in front of us. Bylaw 02-2023, and that is with regards to the Atkinson drain branches, and that's for the third reading. And then Tina's gone over the rest of the bylaws for us. So the motion in front of us is that if no one cares to speak to bylaw 02-2023 on its first, second, or on its third reading, excuse me, that it be considered to have been read a third time and passed. And that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 10-2023, I know, through 13-2023 inclusive, on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. And just before I call the adjournment, just a reminder that St. Patrick's Day happens before our next meeting, and that there are some community events that will be being held. And I'm sure that everybody will be out celebrating, but enjoying responsibly. So now I would ask for a mover and a seconder that we adjourn tonight's meeting at 9 minutes after 8. Deputy or Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? Thank you very much.